Hi everyone, my name is Sandrine. Up till now, I've limited myself to only post videos and articles on spiritualdigging.com and on the YouTube channel. But today I would like to reach out to you as an apprentice spiritual counselor and light worker. Grief was definitely not the first subject I thought I would be talking about, but the recent loss of a very dear friend has helped me realize that I need to do so. And as you would hear it from, the tremolos in my voice as I get to some of the stages, the grief is still very near to my heart, and I'm still in the middle of dealing with it myself. This small lecture is based on the Understanding the 10 Stages of Grief, a best-selling book by Granger E. Westberg, and it will be followed in the next few weeks by short audio clips that will give practical tools to help you move through your own grief. So please be patient with me. It is my first presentation, and don't hesitate to post comments or email questions at spiritualdigging@gmail.com. Thank you very much for your time and for subscribing to this channel, and I hope it helps. First, I think it's important to spend a few minutes defining grief. A Google search for the definition of grief comes up with deep sorrow, especially that caused by someone's death. And while I agree with the general idea, I would like to expand on it a little bit. I believe that grief is that feeling of deep sorrow we experience when we lose someone or something that matters deeply to us, whether it's a family member, a friend, a pet we lose to death or illness, for example, or because we have to move to the other side of the country for work, and we lose our friends and we go to a different school. Grief is caused by losing the things we love, and learning to move on is a difficult, personal, yet universal process. Everyone goes through the same thing. For me, grieving has been about opening my heart and allowing myself to feel. I was very surprised the first time I read this book to find out that the grieving process had 10 stages. 10 stages seem to be so many stages. I didn't go through those. I used to fall in shock, stay there for a little bit, and then the aches and pains would start. Then I would get mad, and then I'd move on. And, I kept repeating that process over and over again. But I think, for me, studying the different stages and looking within myself with the help of my guidance as being a very freeing, if sometimes painful, process. And I hope it helps you too. So with that being said, the first stage that they talk about in the book is shock. And shock would be a temporary amnesia, a trance of sort, that may last from a few minutes to a few days, and for some people much longer. Shock is our subconscious way to soften the blow while our mind is trying to make sense of things. Now, there's nothing wrong with being in shock, and it's normal, and it's part of a survival mechanism, and each individual should be allowed to take as long as they need. But you may find that staying active will help you to move through this stage. Just doing the things that you normally do, at a low grade, will help you to slowly go to the next stage. So how can you help someone who's grieving? I think just being there in case they need anything is the perfect thing to do at this stage. Just don't take over. Let them do what they can do for themselves, because it will help them move. The second stage is expressing emotion. And while it might take a while for shock to wear off, when it does, it usually brings emotional release. It can be sudden, it can pour out of us without any warning, or it can be subtle and even hidden. There's no wrong way to express how you feel about your loss, and there is no need to judge someone else's way of expressing their own emotions. Whatever needs to come out will come out exactly the way it needs to, if you only just let it. One thing you can do to help you move on to the next stage is express your emotion in whichever way they come. alone or with friends. The important bit here is to let them out. And if you want to help someone who's grieving, just being there for them and give them what they need, whether it's a hug or a shoulder to cry on or a sympathetic ear or space. It's what they need to feel better that would help them get on to the next stage. Stage 3 is depression. Depression is a tough topic for me. There's a strong history of depression in my family, and that's the one stage of grieving that I fight against or try really hard not to dive into. It is a universal phenomenon that can last for days or weeks. It affects everyone differently. Some people might get just a slight case of the blues for a few days and then it's over. Some people might just drown in it and stare at the walls and be unresponsive for weeks at a time, months at a time. Just remember that is a normal part of grieving and it will pass. But do seek professional help if it lasts for a really long period of time or if it starts to affect your life, your work, your loved ones in a really negative way. So how can you move on from this stage? I think the biggest part of moving from depression is admitting the depth of the pain that you're in and admitting how much it hurts, how much the loss hurts. Because once we've acknowledged those feelings, the depression tends to lift slightly as your emotion starts coming out. And I believe it's the best thing that you can do for yourself, even though it's one of the hardest. Now, how can you help someone who's in the grieving process and that is depressive? I think the best way is to be there, to give them a quiet assurance that it's okay to be sad and it will not last forever. It's okay to feel depressed and lost, and eventually there will be light at the end of the tunnel, even if it seems really dark and difficult right now. Stage 4 talks about physical symptoms. The book says that many people can become ill because of unresolved grief situation. Physical symptoms are a sure sign that we're not moving through the grieving process. And what it means is that as you stay stuck in one stage, you repeat and rehearse the same negative thought patterns over and over again until it builds up the negative energy that's attached with the thought pattern, until this excess of negative energy has nowhere else to go but inside your body, and it ties itself to all the weak spots that you already have inside yourself. This old finger that you broke, or this old ankle that you rolled, or your neck that's already stiff, and over time it creates aches and pains and pressures and illness and diseases in the long run. So how can you move on, help with the aches and pains? I believe that body work techniques such as chiropractic adjustments or massages or energy chakra healing, Reiki, breath awareness, all of these techniques can bring a huge physical relief, and they do so by moving the energies that is stuck and that is causing your body to hurt. But ultimately, just be aware that the emotions will need to be released for the pain to go for good. How can you help someone who's grieving? Giving them a massage if it's appropriate, draw them a hot bath, or get them a gift certificate so that they can go get a massage, or go to the spa, or anything that can move the energy within the body to help it release it will be a great thing to do. Stage 5 is panic, and you will notice that I have a hard time with this. Panic sets in when we think about nothing else but the loss, or we can't bring ourselves to think about the loss. It's hard to concentrate. You can suffer daily as you begin to realize that this loss is permanent. You may feel like you're losing your mind, but just keep in mind that panic is a normal part of grieving, no matter how scary it can get. How can you move on? Opening to human relationship will help you to move through this stage. Meeting friends, just being around people with a positive attitude would help lift the vibrations, and it will help lift the panicky feeling that you may have. Spiritual practices are also a huge help, whether it's praying or repeating mantras or meditating, mindfulness. All of these can bring a huge sense of relief, both mental and physical, but also spiritual and energetical. How can you help someone who's grieving? Quality time spent with a grieving person is just a very big help. And a quality time, something that they enjoy doing, will help them settle and alleviate the panic feeling. Stage 6 is guilt. We feel a sense of guilt for the loss. We feel like we have done something or neglected to do something that could have changed the outcome. These are the what if questions that keep on twirling into your mind until you feel like you're gonna go crazy with it. And I think it's important to know that they're there and to pay attention to them, but not indulge, so that they may have a chance to move through you and not stay stuck. So how can you move on from guilt? It's really important to face both neurotic and normal guilt and seek professional help when you can no longer tell the difference. And what I mean by that is that having guilty feeling is a normal part of the grieving process, and it's important to maybe look at it a little bit closer, analyze it, write a letter just to see why you feel guilty, where your guilt is at. But do seek professional advice if it's getting completely overwhelming and if you're getting panicky again. How can you help someone who's grieving, who is in this stage? Being there for the grieving person and helping them to see the difference and the different facet of the event might be helpful. Helping them see the situation from different angles so that they can make better sense of it, and encourage to seek professional help if neurotic guilt takes over for a long period of time. Stage 7 is anger and resentment. When we move out of depression and guilt, we become filled with resentment and anger. Not everyone does, but it's a strong possibility. In my case, certainly was. Anger needs to be expressed. No matter how strongly you feel it, it needs to be expressed. It has to come out. It is crucial that you admit to yourself, to your friends, or to God that you're angry and resentful for the loss that you've suffered. So how can you move on? Anger and resentment need to be expressed. You could choose to talk to a friend, family member, to go to your priest, your rabbi, your priestess, your minister. Write a letter. Write a letter and burn it. Join a kickboxing class. Just go on running and screaming around the block. Whatever you need to do, but it needs to go out. It needs to get out of you. It's really important to release the anger, or it will find the weakest spot in your body. An old injury, or somewhere where you already have a tendency to get sick, and it will fester and it will make it worse. And so how can you help someone who's grieving? You can help someone who's grieving by not taking it personally. Acknowledge that the person is mad, and just see why it is that they're mad. They're allowed to be mad, and it's not about you. Stage 8 is resistance. Resistance to coming back to reality. I guess in a way, we refuse to allow things to get back to normal, just in case people forget the tragedy. our sorrow, our loss. Sometimes it's easier to keep grieving than to attempt to go back to life again. And again, no matter how difficult that stage can be, it's an important one to see, to recognize for what it is. It is part of the grieving process. And even though I don't think indulging resistance is the best thing to do, it's still important to recognize that you're allowed to refuse to go back to normal. You're allowed to be sad for what you lost, and you're allowed to keep it that way for as long as you need. So how can you move out of resistance? First, I'd like to say that it's okay to be in mourning for as long as you need to. In a not so distant past, women wore black for a year. Men wore black armband for a year as well. And I think it's not because our society wants us and needs us to move on fast that you're not allowed to experience and mourn for as long as you need. But just remember to live. Remember to live. It's important for you to live your life as well as mourn. How can you help someone who's grieving? You can help the grieving person by acknowledging their loss. Show concern. Keep the memory of the one that they lost alive. Maybe put a positive, spin on it. But don't ask them to move on faster than they're ready to. Stage 9 is hope. And I'm having a really difficult time with hope right now, so I will just read what's on the slide. You feel a deep grief anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. But we can never be sure how long it will last. No two griefs is alike, and not everyone shows emotions. Not everyone needs external help. But one thing is true for everyone. Gradually, hopes come true. I'll get back to you on that. So how can you move on? Or I guess more specifically, how can you bring hope into your life again? Into your grieving process? And this is where I'm at right now. So I would say the best thing to bring hope back into your life is spend time with people you love, slowly reintegrate into the world, do things that you love, listen and take care of yourself, because ultimately you're the only person who knows exactly what you need to bring back that sense of hope and happiness. Now, how can you help someone who's grieving? I would say that the best would be spending time with the people that you love, but at the same time giving them that space that they need. Stage 10 is affirming reality. Loss changes us deeply. We need to find or reaffirm what our reality means to us now. We need to decide whether this loss has changed us. Do we want the same life that we had before? Do we want something different? Do we want something more? How did it change us? Grief can leave us stronger than before or weaker. And I think it's important to note that faith or spirituality seem to be a determined factor in how well people cope with the tragedies in their lives. So how can you move on? I think the most important part in this stage is asking yourself how you want to move on. How did this loss affect you? What does it mean for you and for your future? How is it going to change your life? Is it going to change your life? And I don't mean by that you need to make drastic changes in the way you do things or the way where you live or your work, but I think it's important to realize that you were affected by it, and that realization alone will help you move on. Now, how can you help someone who's grieving? I think it's important to give the recovering person space and time to grow, even if it challenges your view of the world. It's important to understand that their beliefs were changed to a certain degree, that the loss has affected them, and they're allowed to grow in whichever direction is best for them. To conclude this presentation, I just would like to add that reading this book was very helpful to me because it helped me realize the different stages of grief. Up till that point, I thought that there were 3 or 4, and I never even, sat too long thinking about it. I lost someone, I would go into shock, I would get angry, I would ache, and then I would move on. But by doing so, I've been holding on to a lot of aches and pains, and there's a lot of grieving process that I have not completed. And by holding on to all the feelings, the emotions, in a way, I feel now that I haven't quite honored the losses that I've suffered through the years. And I think that's why this book was extremely valuable to me. I believe it's for anyone who would like to read and know more about the grieving process. This is a great book to read. And if you have any questions, any exercise that you would like me to post, or anything that you would like to comment on, please feel free to do so. Thank you again for your time, and for subscribing to this channel. And please forgive the mistakes that that I did make, and my French accent. And thank you very much to you all, and have a great day in love and light. Thanks.